My stepson said that I am not his real dad, and I have no right to order him to do anything. My stepson said that I am not his real dad, and that I have no right to order him to do anything. So when it came time to pay for his college tuition, I told him to let his real father handle it. For 5 years, I raised Ethan like he was my own son. I took him to school, cheered for him at his games, helped him with his homework. I was always there. His biological dad, a complete deadbeat who only showed up when it was convenient for him. But no matter how much I gave, no matter how much I loved that boy, he always made it clear I wasn't his father. So when he turned 18, he made sure to remind me one last time. You're not my real dad. You can't tell me what to do. Fine. If I wasn't his real dad, then I wasn't paying his real bills. And when reality hit, he finally learned what it really meant to be a son. Before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now, let's start the video. When I met Melissa, she was a single mom with a 6-year-old son, Ethan. From the moment I entered their lives, I knew that if I wanted a future with her, I had to accept Ethan as part of the package, and I did, wholeheartedly. I never tried to replace his dad, but I did everything a father should do. I took him to school, helped him with homework, attended every soccer game, and was there for every scraped knee and late-night fever. I wasn't just Melissa's husband. I was Ethan's provider, protector, and support system. But Ethan, he never saw me that way. His biological dad, Kevin, was the kind of guy who would pop in and out of his life like a seasonal sale, only showing up when it made him look good. A birthday here, a holiday there, but never around when it actually mattered. And yet, Ethan worshipped him. Dad said he'll take me fishing next summer, he'd say excitedly, even though Kevin had been making that same promise for years and never followed through. I never talked bad about his dad. I figured one day Ethan would see the truth for himself. But I was wrong, because no matter how much I was there for him, it was never enough. And then, when he turned 18, he made sure I knew exactly where we stood. Ethan's 18th birthday was supposed to be a celebration. I had planned everything, reserved a spot at his favorite restaurant, ordered a cake, even got him a new laptop for college. I wanted him to know how proud I was of him. But instead of being grateful, he was distant the whole night, barely spoke to me, barely looked at me, just sat there, glued to his phone, waiting for a call that, of course, never came. His real dad had promised to show up, again. And once again, he didn't. Melissa tried to keep things lighthearted, but I could see it in her face. She knew what was coming. She had seen this pattern for years. When we got home, Ethan finally snapped. "I don't get why you even did all this," he muttered, throwing himself onto the couch. I frowned. "Because it's your birthday? Because we care about you?" He scoffed. "Whatever. This isn't what I wanted." Melissa sighed. "Ethan, I know you were hoping your dad would show up." He cut her off. "He's my real dad. He has a life. He doesn't have time to baby me like you guys do." That stung, but I held my tongue. Then he turned to me, eyes burning with resentment. "And you," he snapped, "you're not my dad. You never have been. You can't tell me what to do. I don't need anything from you." Something inside me snapped. I had spent over a decade raising this kid, giving him everything, and now he was throwing it all in my face? Fine. If I wasn't his dad, then I wasn't his bank account either. The room went dead silent after Ethan's outburst. Melissa looked at him like she couldn't believe what she had just heard. But me, I felt nothing. For years I had stepped up, supported him, provided for him, never asking for anything in return except maybe a little respect. And now he was making it clear. I was just a guy his mom married, not his father, not even someone he needed. I let out a slow breath, keeping my voice calm. "All right, Ethan, you don't see me as your father? I can respect that." His eyes flickered with something, maybe relief. He thought he had won. "So, since I'm not your father," I continued, "I guess that means I won't have to pay for your college tuition anymore." His smirk instantly disappeared. "Wait, what?" I crossed my arms. "You heard me. I had planned on covering your tuition, your books, even your off-campus housing so you wouldn't have to struggle. But since I'm just some guy and not your real dad, you should ask Kevin to pay for it instead." Ethan's face turned pale. "Wait, no, that's not what I meant," he stammered. I shrugged. Sure sounded like it. Melissa finally spoke up. "Honey, maybe you should apologize." "No, Mom." Ethan turned to her, panicked. "Tell him he can't do that. He already said he'd pay." I chuckled. "And you said you don't need anything from me." He opened his mouth, then closed it. For the first time, he was actually speechless. I grabbed my jacket and started heading upstairs. "Good luck getting your real dad to pay, kid." And with that, I left him standing there, completely stunned. Ethan stood there, his face twisted in shock and panic. He looked at Melissa, expecting her to fix it, but for once, she didn't. She just let out a sigh and shook her head. "You brought this on yourself, Ethan." I went upstairs, letting the reality sink in for him. And sure enough, it didn't take long. An hour later, there was a knock at my office door. "Come in," I said, already knowing who it was. Ethan peeked his head in, looking less cocky than before. "Hey, can we talk?" I leaned back in my chair. "Sure." He stepped inside, shifting awkwardly. "Look, I didn't mean what I said. I was just mad, you know?" I raised an eyebrow. "Mad at who? Because I wasn't the one who let you down today." His jaw tightened, but he didn't say anything. I folded my arms. "Let me ask you something, Ethan. When was the last time Kevin actually did something for you?" He shifted uncomfortably. He tries." I scoffed. "Tries? When was the last time he paid for something? Showed up when he said he would? Did anything that a father is supposed to do?" Ethan swallowed, staring at the floor. "I don't know." I sighed. "Look, I get it. You want him to be someone he's not. And maybe, deep down, you know he's never going to change. But that doesn't mean you get to take it out on me." His shoulders slumped. "No," I cut him off. "You don't get to insult me 1 second and ask for money the next. That's not how this works. You made it clear. I'm not your dad. And now, you get to live with that choice." His face fell. He knew he was screwed. Ethan stood there, his hands clenched into fists, his mouth opening and closing like he wanted to argue. But for once, he had nothing to say, because he knew I was right. Still, he tried one last time. "Come on, man. You know I was just mad when I said that. I didn't mean it." I tilted my head. "So you only meant it when you thought it wouldn't cost you anything." He flinched. I sighed. "Ethan, this isn't about money. This is about respect. For years I've given you everything I could. I never expected a thank you every time, but I did expect you to at least treat me like I mattered." His face reddened with guilt. I held up a hand. "Number? I've already made my decision. If I'm not your father, then I'm not your financial safety net either. You need college money? Call Kevin." Ethan's jaw tightened, and that's when it finally hit him. Kevin wouldn't pay. He never had. He never would. And now, for the first time, he couldn't run back to me. I stood up and clapped a hand on his shoulder. "Life's about choices, kid. You made yours." Then I walked past him, leaving him standing there completely defeated. For the next few days, Ethan was a mess. He tried everything, giving me the silent treatment, acting like he didn't care, slamming doors, all the usual teenage dramatics. But beneath all of that, he was panicking. Melissa told me he had tried calling Kevin twice. No answer, no callback, nothing. It was like reality was finally sinking in. Then, one night, I overheard him arguing with Melissa in the kitchen. "Mom, you have to talk to him," Ethan begged. Melissa sighed. "Ethan, he's right. You can't treat people like they're disposable and then expect them to take care of you." "But it's college, Mom. He can't just take that away." I leaned against the doorway. "Watch me." Ethan jumped and spun around. His face was red, his eyes desperate. "Please, just listen. I'll do better, okay? I'll respect you, I shook my head. "Ethan, respect isn't a switch you flip when it benefits you. You either mean it or you don't. And you made it very clear that you don't see me as your father." He swallowed. I was angry. "So was I said. "And I didn't say anything I didn't mean." He looked down, completely out of arguments. He had nothing left. For the first time in his life, there was no one to clean up his mess. And it was about time. Ethan didn't know what to do. For years he had been able to say whatever he wanted, act however he wanted, and still get everything handed to him. But now, he was truly on his own. Melissa gave me a worried look, but she didn't argue with me. She knew that Ethan needed to learn this lesson. Later that night, I heard a knock on my office door. I already knew who it was. "Come in," I said, not even looking up from my laptop. Ethan walked in slowly, hands shoved in his pockets. He hesitated for a moment before mumbling, "I'm sorry." I glanced up. "For what?" He swallowed hard. "For what I said, for acting like you don't matter. You've done more for me than Kevin ever has, and I was a jerk about it." I leaned back in my chair, studying him. "Why are you saying this now? Because you mean it, or because you need money?" His face turned red with shame. "Because I mean it." I didn't say anything, just waited. He sighed and ran a hand through his hair. "Look, I get it. I screwed up. I was so focused on trying to make Kevin something he's not that I didn't appreciate what I actually had." Now that sounded real. I exhaled slowly, letting his words settle. "Ethan, I don't need you to worship me. I don't need you to call me dad. But if you want me to support you, whether that's college or anything else, you need to treat me with respect." He nodded quickly. "I will, I swear." I leaned forward. "This isn't about money. It's about being a decent person. You don't get to pick and choose when people matter to you. Either they do or they don't." He took a deep breath. "I get it, and I really am sorry." For the first time in years, I actually believed him. I sat there for a long moment, just watching him. For the first time, Ethan actually looked nervous, like he knew this was his last chance to make things right. I finally sighed. "All right, I'll tell you what." His eyes snapped up, hopeful. "I'll pay for your first semester," I said. "But if you want me to keep paying after that, you're going to have to earn it." He blinked. "Earn it? How?" I leaned forward. "Respect, responsibility, effort. If I see you slacking, being ungrateful, or treating me like I don't exist again, the money stops, no warnings, no second chances." Ethan swallowed hard. "Okay, I understand." "Good," I said, "because this is your last shot." For the first time, he didn't argue, didn't roll his eyes, didn't act like an entitled brat. Instead, he nodded and stuck out his hand. "Deal." I shook it. Melissa, who had been standing silently in the doorway, let out a breath of relief. That night, for the first time in years, Ethan actually sat with us for dinner. No phone, no attitude, no tension. Just a normal meal. And I realized something. Maybe he finally understood. The next few months were different. Ethan actually followed through. He didn't just take the money and run, he put in the effort. He started treating me with respect, actually listening when I gave advice. No more backhanded comments, no more snide remarks about me not being his real dad. And you know what? It felt good. One night, he came home looking frustrated. I was in the living room, watching TV, when he dropped his bag on the floor and let out a sigh. "What's up?" I asked. He hesitated before finally saying, "Kevin called me today." I raised an eyebrow. "Oh?" Ethan clenched his jaw. "He told me he wished he could help me with college, but things are really tight for him right now." I didn't say anything, just let him talk. He laughed bitterly. "Tight? The guy just posted pictures of his new boat last week." There it was. Reality was finally hitting him. Ethan looked up at me. "You were right about him." I nodded slowly. "Yeah, I know." He sat down across from me, rubbing his hands together. I wasted so much time trying to impress someone who was never really there for me. I didn't rub it in, didn't say, "I told you so." Instead, I just said, "Well, at least you figured it out now." He nodded. "Yeah, I did." And for the first time, I felt like his real dad. Not because of the money, not because I bailed him out, but because he finally saw me for who I had always been. A year passed, and Ethan kept his word. He worked hard in school, got a part-time job to cover his own expenses, and, most importantly, never disrespected me again. One day, as we were sitting on the porch just talking about life, he suddenly said, "You know, I don't think I ever really thanked you." I raised an eyebrow. "For what?" He exhaled. "For everything. For stepping up when you didn't have to. For caring when I didn't deserve it." I let out a small chuckle. "Took you long enough." He smiled. "Yeah, I was a brat. I shrugged. You were a kid who wanted to believe his dad was something he wasn't. I get it. Ethan nodded, looking out at the yard. I don't call Kevin Dad anymore. That one caught me off guard. Oh? He sighed. Because a dad isn't just someone who shows up when it's convenient. A dad is someone who's there, always. Someone who teaches you how to be a man. He turned to look at me. And that's you. I didn't say anything right away. I just patted his shoulder and nodded. Proud of you, kid. For years I had hoped he'd see the truth. And now, he finally did. Respect isn't given. It's earned. Ethan had to learn the hard way that being family isn't just about blood. It's about the people who show up, who stay, who actually care. It took losing my support for him to realize how much I had done for him. And once he saw it, everything changed. Have you ever had someone take you for granted, only to regret it later? Drop your stories in the comments. I'd love to hear them.